Ever wondered what it would be like to travel from Rwanda to Kenya by road? Join me as I cross the Rwanda-Uganda border at night. Road trips always leave lasting memories. You are welcome to join me as I make some on this trip. For a lot of people, traveling by air between Rwanda and Kenya or Uganda isn't an option because of the cost. So the next best option for most people is to travel by road. Traveling by road between these countries is easier than ever, and there are a handful of bus companies who facilitate the trips. During my research, I learned that Trinity and Jaguar were the leading options, and although there were other options, but I kept my research to these two companies, and by the end of it all, I decided to go with Trinity. I got to the park on time, and as promised, they left 9:30 p.m. on the dot. At the same time, buses from other companies also left. When you decide to travel by road between the countries, it's important to know what time of the day you travel. These buses usually offer a morning and a night option, and after doing my research for a while, I decided to go for the night option. It gave me an extra half day in Kigali, and it also ensured that I got to travel when it was calm and I could get some sleep on the way. You can find the buses at Nyabugogo Park in Kigali. It's not too far from the city center, and it's a massive park that facilitates trips across the country and across the region. Jaguar, Marsh, POA, Trinity, and all the other cross-border companies have their offices and take off from this park. So it's important to know where it is, and it's important to get there on time. Next up, if you're not a citizen of the East African community, that's one of the countries in the East African community, in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and I believe DRC and South Sudan, you would need to apply for some sort of visa. Depending on the country you're coming from and depending on what you plan to do in the country, you need to apply for a visa. So as a Nigerian, I opted to apply for an East African tourist visa. This is a visa that gives you access to all three countries, Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya, for $100. I got it on arrival at the Kigali International Airport, and it made it easier for me. I did not need to apply for another visa to enter each of these countries. Depending on your country, you may or may not need a visa, and you should know the type of visa you would need if you do. It might be in your best interest to call beforehand at the bus company you plan to use to purchase a ticket. I did not, and when I got there, it was a bit of a slow day. I was able to get a ticket, and the bus wasn't full for the most part. The trip was a little over 500 kilometers in total, and it might sound like a lot, but time passes by when you're having fun or when you're sleeping. When you get to the border, it's important to know that the Rwandan side of the border, they're really strict about what you can bring and what you can take out of the country. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, it's the most pleasant border I've ever been in Africa, because there was no form of corruption that I saw at the very least. Nobody asked for money, nobody demanded for anything. It was show your documents, your visa, set your bags, and you're good to go. Naturally, you really cannot make videos at border crossings or at airports, so I decided not to make any videos so as not to get into trouble. Rwanda uses the Rwandan franc, and at the time I was in the country, it was about 1,300 Rwandan francs to $1. And for the Ugandans, they use the Ugandan shilling, and it was about 3,800 Ugandan shillings to $1. So it's important to know the conversion rate before you go in. I had a bit of Rwandan francs on me, so I changed some francs to Ugandan shillings at the border. It took a bit of mental mathematics, but I had a friend or an acquaintance that I met that we traveled together, and he was able to get me a decent deal. But you know how the conversion rates are at the border. Even when you win, you still lose. So keep that in mind when you're going. Nobody ever tells you this, but Rwanda is different from most other countries in Africa. They are an outlier. And when you're living in Rwanda, I think it's important for you to drop the mentality that you are safe and everything is rosy at the border. Because when you get into Uganda, you realize that, oh, you are back in Africa. Going to Rwanda is like going out of Africa. And when you go into Uganda, you need to have that mentality change from the border, because even from the border crossing, you see the way the currency exchange guys are behaving. You know that, yes, you're back in Africa. So ensure that you have a bit of a mentality change at the border, so you're able to face the issues that are about to come to you. Not saying Uganda is necessarily a bad country, but Rwanda is an outlier, and you need to come correct, so to speak, when you're about to cross the border into Uganda. We crossed into Uganda at the Gatuna border a little after midnight, and after a few more hours of driving, we got to a rest stop within Uganda. We all got down, got things to buy, used the toilet if we needed to. I wasn't sure of whether I would like what was on offer, so I got some potato chips and fruit for the rest of the trip. Whether or not you plan to buy anything or use the toilet, it would be in your best interest to calm down and stretch your legs a bit. When you cross into Uganda, you will notice a difference in the quality of roads. You don't need to be awake, you don't need to be outside the bus, but you will notice that the road quality has changed a bit. And this brings us to the next issue: driving on the other side of the road. I was born and raised in Nigeria, a country that drives on the right side of the road, and every single country that I've been to also drives on the right side of the road. Uganda was the first country I'd been to that drives on the left side of the road, so it was a bit of a mentality change, and it felt weird. I felt like I was on the wrong side of the road when we crossed into the country. It was something that I had to get used to, and you might have to get used to it if it's your first time in a country that drives on the wrong side of the road. I slept for a bit longer, and by the time I woke up, it was already early in the morning. We had moved forward an hour because Uganda is an hour ahead of Rwanda, and I could see the first glimpse of Uganda. It was a new experience, being on the wrong side of the road, seeing this part of East Africa for the first time. My first impressions of Uganda, I wasn't sure what to feel about, because we got in on a Sunday morning and people were on their way to church and the likes, and there was a sense of everybody had somewhere to be. I did not know whether this was the life of the average person in Uganda, but it was something that I needed to get used to, seeing people for the first time in like 12 hours. I believe one of my biggest regrets on this trip was the fact that I did not spend a lot of time in Uganda. When we got to the park in Kampala, I immediately ordered my bus ticket for that evening to Kenya while I went to stay with some friends in the city. Looking back now, I should have given myself at least 24 hours extra to spend more time in Uganda. But I did get to spend a few hours in Uganda, and I almost got robbed. I got rained on, and it was a crazy few hours. See you on the next one.